Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to discuss CSS classes and IDs. We know that we can select every element of a certain tag type in our CSS file. That is to say, we can just say select every paragraph element or select every heading 1 element just by referencing that specific tag inside the .css file. But what do we do if we only want to select some of these? Maybe I don't want to stylize every single paragraph element, I only want to stylize one or two. Or maybe I just want to specify I want to only stylize a single heading 1 element. Well, we've already explored how we can use divs and spans, but these options limit our structure in the HTML. If we wanted to only stylize a few paragraph items, we'd have to make sure that they're all within the same div, and that may not work for us. So the solution to this issue of wanting to stylize only a few elements or only a single element is to use classes and IDs in our CSS. Every HTML element can accept a class or ID attribute. We can then specifically connect to these classes or IDs from our CSS with a special syntax call. And the syntax is a dot or a period for a class call and a hashtag for an ID call. Classes are used to assign a CSS style to multiple different elements throughout the HTML. And these elements don't even need to be the exact same element type. They just need to share the same class name. IDs are used to apply a style to a single specific element. That means IDs should be used for unique elements. Alright, let's explore these ideas further by jumping over to the text editor. Okay, here I am back at the text editor. I have a basic.html file and it's linked to this master.css file, which is currently empty, and this HTML file is linked to my browser. Because there's nothing in the body, I don't see anything right now in the browser. So let's fill it in with some HTML elements. We'll start off with maybe an H3 heading. So we'll say I'm in H3 heading, and then we'll create two divs. I'm going to create my first div, and this first div, I'm actually going to keep the class empty for now, and I'll write a paragraph that says I'm inside the first div. And then I will create another div. Again, we'll leave the class empty right now. We'll create a paragraph inside of this that says I'm inside the second div. And then at the end of all this, I'll create one last paragraph, and this will say I am a unique P outside the divs. Save that. Let's refresh our page here, and I can see the H3 heading inside the first div, inside the second div, and I'm a unique paragraph outside the divs. Alright, let's imagine that I wanted to make this text, I'm inside the first div, the color blue, and I only wanted to affect this line to be the color blue. Well, how can I do that? Unfortunately, I can't just call this paragraph tag because that would make all paragraph elements blue. And I can't just call a div tag because that would make this blue as well as this blue. So what I need is some sort of unique identifier to change this paragraph to blue. And what I can do is use a class. So that's where I'm going to fill in this class. So let's give this first div a class name of first div. I'm going to save that. And unlike before, when we just typed in the element tag and then curly braces, since I defined an actual class name, I'm going to use dot and then the class name. And in my case, I called it first div. And notice how Adam actually helps us out by suggesting the name. Then I'll have a set of curly braces, and I'm going to say this color is blue. Semicolon, save, and then I refresh, and now I see it change blue for that one that was inside the first div. Now let's imagine I want to make this second one have a background color. Well, to do that, I'll just come back here and assign it a class. So I can say second div, save those changes, and remember, because it's a class, I need to specify dot, and then second div, and let's give this a background color. So we'll say background color is gray. You could also alternatively just say background is gray. Save those changes, come over here, refresh, and now I see a background. So what's nice about this is I no longer have to worry about referencing a specific element tag because that could show up multiple times in my HTML. So I don't need to worry about specifying div. I also don't need to worry about specifying all paragraph elements. Instead, I can assign a class to a group of specific elements, and it's really common to use classes with these divisions or divs, and then I can stylize only things that are within this class instead of everything that's within a div. Now, the other alternative is to use an ID selector. And ID selectors should be used to single out a single HTML element. So for example, this paragraph is a good candidate for it because it's a unique paragraph outside the divs. So if I want to add some sort of style call just to a single element on my HTML, I can assign an ID to this. So within that paragraph tag, I'll say ID is equal to, and then you just provide some sort of unique string name. So for example, we'll say singled out. So I have this ID that's now attached to this paragraph element. So if I save this, and I only want to stylize this last paragraph element, I don't need to worry right now about calling all paragraph elements. I just need to worry about calling ID. And for IDs, the syntax is to start with this hashtag and then the idea name, which in this case was singled out. And let's change this color to be red. Save that, and then I'm going to refresh here, and now I see that last line has turned red. Okay, and that's really the basics of the selector types between classes and IDs. And classes are what we're going to be using a lot, especially when we learn about Bootstrap. So if we come back here, I just want to do a quick review. You can specify this class attribute inside of a HTML element, and then to call it or stylize it from the CSS, you just say dot and then the class name. And then for IDs, which are typically going to be just a single HTML element, you supply an ID name, and then to stylize it, you'll say hashtag and then the name of the ID. And that's really the basics. Later on, we'll learn about Bootstrap, which is going to have class names already defined for us that we can easily pass in to stylize things automatically. But for right now, all you need to understand is the basic syntax that you can provide class and ID codes to your HTML elements and then refer to them with periods for classes inside your CSS and hashtags for IDs. Okay, that's it for this lecture. We'll see you at the next one.